to the education. We only need to learn education. Afghanistan is the only country in the world where girls are banned from secondary school and also from university. An entire generation of girls are being deliberately denied the right to learn because of their gender. And all the time you're seeing the Taliban are claiming that it's because of culture, it's because of tradition. Banning girls from education has no foundation in Afghanistan culture. Also has no justification in our religion too. Education has been built in our society for generations, and our religion encourages the pursuit of knowledge for both man and woman. There is no genuine issue with curriculum, there is no genuine issue with education environments. So let us be clear, the exclusion of girls from going to school is not about protecting religion or culture. But the crisis goes beyond simply closed schools. The Taliban are not working to build an inclusive education system. Instead, they are expanding a network of madrasas that focus on ideological brainwashing. The madrasas do not focus on, even real Islamic studies or critical thinking, science, math, or skills that we needed in Afghanistan, or we are needing it in Afghanistan. Instead, they are, promoting extremism inside of the madrasas. They are teaching them how to, be a really strong fighter, military, trainings, how to fight, how to use guns, the same things that they learned in the past, 25 years in their own madrasas. This is not education, it's preparing a generation for conflict instead of knowledge, peace, and progress. It risks raising young people in an environment shaped by extremism rather than education. This is extremely dangerous. I'm all the time saying that those atrocities that are happening inside of Afghanistan, it's not going to remain there. It's coming to regional countries and also to global countries as well. It's not only an issue for Afghanistan future, it's a regional and global security concern too. A country where millions of girls are denied education, where many boys grew up with the Taliban ideology and extremism, is a country whose future stability is deeply at risk. But there are, if I can do the second question, there are resistance in Afghanistan through Afghan women. There are women that they are working inside of Afghanistan, have home-based schools, secular schools. Those women that once they were teachers in universities and schools, they are right now have home-based schools, secular schools in their houses. That's why Taliban are afraid from educated women and mothers, because still with all those restrictions that they have inside of Afghanistan, they are preparing education space for other girls, what they learn in school, what they learn in university, also in their life, they are teaching others. Also, but I just want to mention that These all sector schools, online classes, these all home-based schools. I'm working in this area. I have home-based schools. I have secret schools inside of Afghanistan. But it cannot replace the national education system. It cannot reach the millions of Afghan girls that they are right now in a really remote area. They don't have access to internet, they don't have access to resources, they don't have access to, a safe space to continue their education. So the solution is really simple. Girls' schools and also education centers should reopen. It's, all those home-based schools and also education places that right now are working, in secret, these are acts of resistance. But this cannot replace the national education system. There are, I'm on the, with the new Taliban law, they really, clarified that Taliban see themselves as a social and also political superior to other Afghans and believe that only they are entitled to rule. Because of this mindset, they are rejecting the idea of inclusive government beyond their own circle, and also they deny women political and social participation. They also portray freedom of expression, independent media, and intellectual criticism as being against religion. However, many of their actions over the past 5 years have severely damaged the reputation of Islam and contradict its core values of justice, dignity, and consultation. Afghanistan's stability requires a legitimate national framework based on the rule of law, political participation, and balanced foreign policy. Otherwise, Afghanistan risks once again becoming a chessboard for regional and global power competition. Afghanistan must not remain a battlefield for others' conflicts, and also it should become a crossroad for peace, cooperation, and stability. This is why the international community has a critical role to play. First of all, the world must recognize gender apartheid as a crime under international law. What's happening in Afghanistan is not discrimination. It is the systematic exclusion of women and girls from education, employment, and public life. Naming this reality as a gender apartheid is essential because for accountability. Also, international community should support women lead organization. There are educational opportunities outside, like scholarships, other programs abroad. When I'm talking about scholarship, I just remember 10 days ago, or I think 9 days ago, the UK ban issue on Afghan visas. When I'm talking about this, I remember that ban visas on Afghan students, especially because I think there's no difference between the Taliban and also those that they are banning visas on girls, especially in Afghanistan. Taliban are banning girls inside of Afghanistan, and those that they have scholarship opportunity for girls with all those horrible situation, crisis that they have inside of Afghanistan. They are applying for those scholarship, and they are banning scholarship visas for them. I cannot see any difference between these
bans. Also, those women-led organizations that they are working in Afghanistan especially, they have separate schools, they have online education system for girls inside of Afghanistan. They should be supported. And also, finally, the Taliban may close school gates, but they cannot close the minds of Afghan girls. The real question before the world today is simple. Will we allow gender apartheid to become normalized, or will we stand with Afghan girls and defend their right to education, work, and freedom? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think especially one point is very important, and we don't discuss this a lot in Western Europe, those Taliban schools. Because it may seem like this may be irrelevant for us, we are just sitting in Brussels, why should we care? But at the moment, I don't know if you have been following, but there is an imminent terror attack threat in Brussels from a jihadi nation. And parallel to this, Taliban is actually raising new generations of jihadist terrorists. And those people, they will not only be an issue for Afghanistan, they will be an issue for Middle East, for Europe, for the entire world. So we are sort of repeating the same mistake, and 20 years from now we will say that, oh, we should have stopped this 20 years ago. But I'm afraid it's going to be again too late. So it is one of the issues that we need to understand. And we need to understand that it's not only about the future of Afghanistan, but it's our own future as well. So the next speaker, I would like to continue with Ambassador Andisha. So you're currently Afghan ambassador to the UN in Geneva. It is obvious that for others maybe it can be a bit confusing. Of course, you're not an ambassador representing Taliban. That's very clear. So a major focus of your work is also covering the Human Rights Council under UN work. So could you please tell us more about the Human Rights Council's position regarding the gender apartheid? So what more do you think UN can do? Do you think there is enough done? And also parallel to this, in what ways European countries can also support the UN's work, both for pushing the issue of gender apartheid, but also the situation of women in Afghanistan?
Thank you very much. But I'd like to begin by thanking the organizers of today's events, Madam Senator, the Senate of Belgium, Sheikh, Madam Ambassador, our colleagues, and also the students, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to you all. What if I can take the first 2 minutes to set the scene a little bit on why you're here, what's happening at this state, in this very ancient, beautiful building, and then in the next 5 minutes I'll talk about the question that you asked. But first of all, let me confess that now I feel how some of our women who sit in a totally male dominated panels will feel, because here I'm feeling that there's some gender imbalance under a lot of pressure. But anyway, it's good to be in here, and I think my job at the Geneva in the past 4 or 5 years has been so while we're sitting here, we all know that our world, especially our region, is engulfed in one of the most horrendous crises ever seen, perhaps after the Second World War. I think that is something that we should think about. That why we are at this time and age in a crisis which, if you have spoke about it 3 years ago, it would have been unforeseen. Similarly, we were here last night and in the past month, Afghanistan, under the Taliban regime, has drawn the country into a region of war with the state of Pakistan. If you all remember, one thing that the international community was trying to sell was that, you know what, Taliban, they have been some level of peace. Of course, the grievances that you heard in this panel, from women education, to women participation in gender apartheid, to women role in politics, have all been there, but it's all been neglected because some people thought that, you know, bringing Taliban after 20 years back to the Taliban and would have probably gave some level of peace to that place. But we, from day one, even from the negotiations with the Taliban in Doha, we were insisting that no, that's not true. That's not the nature of the Taliban. And so what we see right now, making Afghanistan a base, a safe haven for a number of terrorist organizations. They did the same thing when 9/11 happened. They took the country hostage just for hosting the American, and we faced the disaster. Right now, they're doing the same. So, not only that the country is not secure, it's into a very vicious war which takes the life of our civilians, but also all of these things. I think that's the context. Coming back to Geneva, you asked, I think Geneva in 2021 became the epicenter of the Afghanistan's women resistance. And that was part of the broader resistance, which was inside Afghanistan. It started from Panjshir, extended into the neighboring countries, Tajikistan. Then we had a women resistance movement which started from the streets of Kabul, streets of Mazar Sharif, everywhere. But then, of course, some of them retreated to places like Geneva, the excited movements. And I think I remember it was September or October of 2021 which we pushed the UN Human Rights Council, where I was an ambassador and also vice president at that time, was in the Human Rights Council. We pushed for an independent investigative mechanism at that time. But no country had the appetite at the time to come forward. Thanks to Europe, especially Nordic countries at the time. So we had at least in the month of October of 2021 a mandate for a special rapporteur for Afghanistan, which is Mr. Richard. I think this is how the things start. And it was part of this whole group sitting here and the others there that they came for the first time in May 2022 with the help of the embassy, with the help of some organization that we had, to start pushing, to start doing that what we call the women resistance from exile, both supporting their sisters who are in the streets, who are in the prisons of the Taliban, who are under the Taliban gang, in Afghanistan, in Iran, in Pakistan, in that chaotic evacuation process, but also raising the voice of the Afghan women in Geneva itself. And then fast forward from that Richard Bennett's mandate, we kept pushing. We did not satisfy with just a special rapporteur for Afghanistan. So there were two strings, one string of women, all of us together, and also, of course, a lot of men. We pushed for creation of an independent investigative office, which after 4 years, we got it end of last year, and just right now I got an email from the Office of OECHR that the TOR and mandate, everything is clear, and people will be recruited. So we will have a proper independent investigative mechanism for the situation of Afghanistan, which includes all rights. So I think that's the biggest issue. On the other side was the gender apartheid push, which I really appreciate. The work of all the advocates. I understand Afghanistan is a case forward in this, has been the case before and right now, but this is a more kind of political discussion happening in New York, but the advocacy of Afghan women are relentless. So, normatively, we have probably the most visible achievement, if I can call it that way, in the area of human rights, emanating from Geneva, and of course supported by EU, supported by many other countries, Canada, Australia, Netherlands, they came together, the UK. So I think in that area we have a lot, and now is the time that independent investigative mechanism needs to be funded, needs to be supported technically, needs to get access, and I think this will make very important layer with which I will finish my discussion, and I think that will also be a very good segue for the next discussion on the political side. So this work that we do on the human rights side is not working in isolation. This woman resistance is part of a bigger picture that we have. So I put the bigger picture of international affairs that's happening. The bigger picture in Afghanistan is that the resistant forces, the opposition forces of Afghanistan, I'm glad that for the first time there is an opportunity for all of us to converge here, and I hope that this will continue from now on, particularly that the region is going towards some shift, is that there are three major agreements on the changes to happen. Number one is we all desire, we all want, we all work, we all fight, basically, different kinds of fights, for a return of a popular sovereignty in Afghanistan, constitutional state. Because right now, we have a state that doesn't have a constitution. The sovereign or one person, he thinks that he's representative of God on the earth. So number one, popular sovereignty, which brings all the opposition groups, despite the diversity, together. Number two is what I discussed, is the human rights. Because a country based on human rights, on the principles of human rights, not because the Belgians will be happy or the EU will be happy, because we think that if the human right is internalized in the system of government, you will live in peace. Just for our own sake. If women's rights, children's rights, if the right of family, all the basic universal declaration of human rights. That is for prosperity and that is for stability. And number three is our territorial integrity and independence. We want an independent country. Respect the territorial integrity, independent in foreign affairs, but also free in our domestic affairs. I think these three things bring all of us together. And that's why if you see women resistance, if you see our work in the Human Rights Council, and if you see our work on the constitutional system, is all part of a bigger picture for a better future of Afghanistan. And today, sitting here, despite all this crisis, I'm much more optimistic than any other time in the past 5 years. And when the Chinese have this problem that there is always an opportunity in crisis, and I think I can see that opportunity in Afghanistan and also in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the speech. I mean, just like Afghan women should be involved in other discussions, I think Afghan men should also be involved in gender equality discussions. That's why it was very good to have you in this.
Not all discussions are women.
And then I'd like to continue with our last speaker, Parasto Hakim. So you actually left Afghanistan relatively recently in 2024, and your focus was the education of Afghan girls. So my question is beyond that though, because we also have an experience of living there, seeing the reality on the ground. So if you can tell us a little bit about the situation, especially in the areas which we consider as Taliban strongholds. What sort of struggles we see coming from women? How is it like being women there? But also we understand that many of them, they also want to leave the country, but which is also extremely complicated. Tell us about.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to be here today, especially with the answers that I'm going to mention later. In Afghanistan, mostly in the rural areas that you have mentioned, overall right now the situation is disastrous for men, children and women. A man in Afghanistan after 2021 lost his job because he was replaced by the Taliban's militia. A girl in Afghanistan lost the right to a very basic thing that everybody, millions and billions of girls around the world does, which is going to school. Boys in Afghanistan lost their freedom of deciding who they want to be in the future because they were asked and forced to go to the madrasas, which is not Islamic madrasas, it's madrasas made by the Taliban and their own curriculum, which is very different than what we have in our religion. And women, of course, you have all maybe hear us and Afghanistan in the headlines today, unfortunately, which always is there because there is a new rule banning women and taking away her freedom from her. Women are banned from going to schools, banned from going to universities, banned from businesses and being part of the community, and of course, they are banned to appear in public with 2 eyes being visible. So maybe most of you have read this, that the Taliban asked the women to only one eye should be visible in the public, and their voices should not and under any circumstances be heard by any man, even if they are in their house, they will get detained by the Taliban. But in the same situation, these women, these men, and these children still stoned in Afghanistan. This might be very historically correct thing that we have done. These girls that they have been banned from their basic rights, they stood up, they knew that, yes, of course, we waited a lot for the international community to come and do something, but when we saw that there was nobody, we stood up. Like Wajma said here, many of us, including me, we stood there, we created secret schools. Right now, I alone am managing 35 secret schools in Afghanistan. We have more than 2,800 children and girls studying under our network. Same with the beautiful initiative that Wajma has. We have so many girls inside Afghanistan that we do this because we know nobody else can help us. This is somehow giving us the power. We created universities when they banned the universities in December 2022. We created secret channels to continue our businesses to be still part of the community as we deserve to. It's not something that I or international community have to beg this group to give us. It's a basic right and I want that. So we still continue to fight, and as we speak today here, unfortunately, more than 22 million people in Afghanistan do not have access to food, and they don't know where their next meal is going to come from. And despite the situation that's going on here, instead of taking care of that, which is very basic in the Taliban, of course, any government or any of the de facto authorities or any group can manage this, but they are still putting girls who are demanding their basic rights, which their motto is work, life, and freedom. They are putting these girls in the prison. More than 8,000 people have been reportedly put in the detention centers of the Taliban just because protesting against them. So these are some of the examples of the work that we have done despite being completely erased from the community. We stood there, we did something, and we stood there to tell you that we do not demand our rights just from you. We also are fighting for it. That's why we know what are our rights. That's why we are coming here and we are asking you as well. But despite everything that we have to go through and we have to stand and do so many stuff, I have always been asked this one question by the international community everywhere I go. They were asking us, where are the Afghan men? And today, fortunately, I'm very glad to say that they are here. We have the representative of those men that they are standing in front of the Taliban, in front of the injustice that's going on in Afghanistan, and fighting for our rights. I do not believe in fights. None of us in Afghanistan do. We are tired of it. But if that is an option, we have it. We have a political option, we have diplomatic options, and if needed, we have that option as well. But today I'm very glad that you finally have heard us, and we have our men in here, and also in this room, that they can tell us they are here, and they are fighting in the mountains of Afghanistan. And getting out of Afghanistan, the second part of your question, legally and to get a visa in Afghanistan, to just go to Pakistan or Iran, an individual has to pay more than 1,000 euros to get and obtain a visa. To go to Pakistan or Iran, they are facing so much discrimination and so many new orders and laws that have been limiting Afghan people and their lives, and it's making it so much difficult for them to stay there. And that's why it is worse and it is most difficult than crossing borders illegally, then crossing the forests, and crossing many seas and oceans. But still, Afghan people are choosing these ways because that is easier than living under the Taliban and living under this dictatorship and this group. And as my colleague said here, I also heard from one of the distinguished European Parliament members. She said, which I quote, no matter how long you're going to build the walls across your countries, they will still come. The terrorist groups will come. Those children that I have mentioned that they are going to madrasas, the extremist madrasas, they are going to come because they are brainwashed, they are just machines, and they see you as a threat. You are all, ladies and gentlemen in this room, a threat for all those children that they have been brainwashed. So it's very important for me at the end of my speech to tell you that we have done our part. We have came to you today with the solution. And it is, allow me to remind you, your job to stand for human rights declaration that today has completely been violated by the Taliban. Every one of the articles of the Human Rights Declaration have been violated by the Taliban. And let me finish it by a question. When are you going to react and do something about it? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was also very strong as the closing words. But of course, I mean, all those schools, it's very courageous that you and so many others are running those schools, but it's 2026 and we're talking about underground schools and we are talking about children risking their lives just for education. So, and when you go to some of the governments or institutions and they say that, yeah, but you cannot do much, we are not that weak and we need to understand that we are strong and we can do more. I would like to also open the floor for questions now. Are there any questions? Yes, please. Could you please push the red button to ask your question and then push the green?
Yes. 1.5 years ago, at the University of Yale, there was a woman from Kabul giving the doctor honoris causa. And this woman opened her house in Kabul to young ladies and girls which were very in despair. They had to flee. And in her house, they could stay for a while. But afterwards, she told us it was extremely difficult to get these women out of Afghanistan because they would be in prison if they were caught. And I wanted just to ask what the Western government do for these women.
Would you like to? We can start, and in the meantime, maybe our participants can think of their questions as well. Would like to start, and maybe
Well, yes, it's correct that it's very difficult for people in Afghanistan, particularly women, because they're bound to get out of their houses, like not necessarily from their houses, but traveling inside Afghanistan is not allowed for them without their mahram, and it's making it very difficult for single women and also for women who are widowed or those who do not have a male guardian. And in the same time, it's very difficult to take a group of people, and especially girls, get out of the country. And also now, families, men and women, it's very difficult for them to get out. There are some countries, for example, France has been one of the countries since 2021. They have been standing there and they have been providing humanitarian visas for Afghan people, especially for women. There are some processes that they have to go through, and it will be easy for women to get humanitarian visas. I'm not sure until when it's going to be like this, but it's easier to come this way. But in many of other countries, unfortunately, because they're trying to technically be in diplomatic relationship with the Taliban, they deny to do that. For example, Germany has been suggesting to many Afghan families who have been in Pakistan waiting to get their visas to Germany, they have suggested them that we will pay you, you go back to your country, Afghanistan. So it's very funny to see how things function, but since I am in France right now, I know they are still cooperating, and it might be easier to do it through that channel. Thank you.
Yes, please. And then any other questions?
Suggestion.
Thanks very much for this very interesting expose. The Taliban have mothers, wives, daughters, sisters, friends, female friends. What do these women do? Are they also locked up at home, or are they sent abroad to study? I cannot believe that the Taliban let their own family members go uneducated.
Hello, my name is Darshia. I'm representing the Children Entrepreneurs Association here in Brussels. I was wondering, hearing your wonderful expose, and following also the deteriorating, distressing news coming from Afghanistan about women, since we're here in Brussels, in Belgium, and in the EU, what are your concrete expectations, actually, from being here and from raising this issue to the forefront? Thank you.
سوال ما با فارسی است به خاطر که دقیق متوجه شویم، چون من فرانسوی زیاد نیست، ولی یا مجاور یا ترجمانی میکنم. ولی من یک سوال داشتم که
تلفن تا دور بان.
یک سوال ما داشتم که البته یک کس ترجمانی کنه، چون
تلفن تا دور بان صدا میده. تلفن تا دور بان مینم. تلفن تا دور بان که صدا میده.
بله، من میخواستم سلام برسم، ولی من میخواستم که به فارسی برم ببینیم که صحیح متوجه شن و میتونه یک کس به انگلیسی ترجمه کنم. سوال من این است که ما زنان افغانستان بسیار در دیده بلنجگیر هستند. ما وقتی از افغانستان گپ میزنیم، از کودکهای افغانستان گپ میزنیم، با 100 بار وجدان خود پاک کنیم به خاطر که حقوق از ما نه تنها در زمان طالبان پیمان شده، در زمان جمهوریت 100% پیمان شده. ما ویدیوهای شواهدی ما داریم که در زمان جمهوریت در ولایات و بسیار فجایع با کودکان تنفروشی میکردن، زنان در سرک به خاطر یک لوبیا فاصله در سرک میدان در همه جای تنفروشی میکردن. یا تضمین در آینده هست که من تکلیف روحی و روانی دارم به خاطر زنان و کودکان افغانستان که حقوق از ما پیمان شدن، به خاطر شوهرشان یا قطع ازای بدن بودن، به خاطر که یا کاری شده بودن یا میلی بودن یا شوهر نداشتن و کودکانشان مانده بود. جای خنده نداره، جای گریه داره. تمام تک زن افغان باید گریه کنند. بسیار مشکل است به زنان افغان، به اون کسی که وجدان دارن عدالت میفهمن. ما بسیار تمام زنای ما
سوال تا بگو میگه.
بله، سوال من این است که ما بیشتر از حالی که زنان در زندان هستن در زمان جمهوریت ما زنان ما در زندان بعد عذاب جرمی که اونا نام نداشتن و کودک خود نام بیان. سوال من این است که آیا تضمین هست در آینده که ما امروزی که ما 5 ساله که من در یک امضا نداشتیم در زمان جمهوریت
سوال من این است
کی تضمین میکنه به خاطر زنان افغانستان کودکان افغانستان های تضمین کنندهش 80% این کسی شما همینطور در باشید.
So the question was, she referred that before 2021 we still had women in the prisons, and they were in the prisons because of very normal reasons, like they didn't have food to feed their children. What is the guarantee that after the Taliban, perhaps she's saying that people who are representing the opposition group, what is the guarantee that tomorrow we will not face the same situation, especially for women, their rights are not going to be violated as it is now and before the Taliban?
The last question and then...
Thank you. In April 2001, Ahmad Massoud was already warning Europe about the situation in Afghanistan, especially the condition of women. A few years later, here in the Belgian Parliament, Shidi Bashini was already delivering the same message. In 2004 and 2005, I had the chance to see young girls smiling and learning in school in the Panjshir Valley. Today, the situation deeply affects me as a woman, as a mother of 2 Afghan children. And yet, more than 20 years on, this war still remains largely unanswered. Reopening school is a hope, a dream, but today it seems impossible to engage with the Taliban. Month after month, we see doors closing rather than opening. So my question is, what concrete action should Belgium and Europe take now to defend the right and education of Afghan women? And if even the Afghan diaspora cannot engage with the Taliban, who can truly influence them today? Thank you.
Thank you very much for all your questions. So I will go back to our speakers now and give them a short time, maybe 1.5 minutes each. And one fundamental element, I think we can combine 2 questions in a way about what do you expect from EU institutions, EU member states like Belgium, what can they tangibly do for Afghanistan? That's an important element that we should, of course, cover other questions too. Can we start from that end?
I would like to answer that question جواب سوال شما من میخوایم بگویم که در وضعیتی که هستیم آیا دیگر راهی وجود داره غیر از اینکه ما از این وضعیت خود نجات بدیم از این قدم بدتر دیگر نمیتونه شود.
The situation that we are right now, do you think there is any other way than getting rid of the Taliban? Because the situation cannot be worse than what it is right now.
ما برای رسیدن به یک نظام دموکراتیک که در اون حقوق زنان یکی برای اصلی او باشه چانس دیگر نداریم جز از مبارزه و دادخواهی و این از الان هیچ کسی نمیتونه برای شما تضمین بده که چی اتفاق بیفته. راهی که فعلا ما مجبور هستیم در پیش بگیریم مبارزه و دادخواهی است.
To go to the democratic government in Afghanistan, there is no other way, there is no other chance but to take the risk and stand against the Taliban and continue the resistance that we have right now.
Thank you. I think I'll try and be a question, and somehow it also answers our compatriot Sawat and London manager. I think you're right that Afghanistan National Hero Massoud, when he came to Strasbourg and also here, he warned of the same thing, and that happened. It was just before 9/11. And what we saw was 20 years of us is that the development, socio-economic, educational-wise, in terms of the HDIs and the Human Development Index. So if you look at Afghanistan history from 1901 to 2001, there have been one side of a balance, the scale from 2001 to 2001. In all the areas, from the roads, from the building of schools, level of girls' education, access to primary health, drop in infant mortality, all of this statistics were high. While we were in fight with the same group, if the same group would have not fought, we probably had much more different Afghanistan right now. But the generation that you see here is all the product of that. But the warnings were coming because we knew that also within this society, there was if I can call it, enlightenment elements, forces, which were fighting. So I would say that we will not look at from who won and who lost. In case of Afghanistan, from year 2000 or 2001, when Ashur was there and today we are there, I look at it as probably what Hegel would have said, a kind of dialectic of two forces fighting each other. And when I look at the total summation of it, I could see that still the forces who were working for the freedom, who were working for human rights. Maybe we lost many people, like Ashur himself. We lost many people even yesterday in Kabul. So there is a fight going on. But when you look at an institution like this, it took 1,000 years for you to build it. We are still in the first 150 years of it. I'm not saying that we should go to 1,000 years, because now we are moving with the speed of internet. So in the war of ideas, I think we are succeeding, we are progressing, we are giving lots of sacrifices, but I'm very sure that internalizing human rights and having a constitutional state system will solve the issues. And for that matter, not only Afghanistan's people, but even our regional countries have come to that conclusion that lack of a proper state, a representative state, is the most dire issue in Afghanistan. And I'm hoping that we will succeed.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Foundation. You covered some of the points that I want to raise, and just quickly build upon that for 3 concrete recommendations. We have an opportunity ahead of us, and that is the Treaty of Crime Against Humanity, which is being discussed right now by the 26th of UN Security Council. I will make use of this opportunity and work together and call for purification of gender apartheid as a crime against humanity. Or, if we use this opportunity, history will write that after we were suffering, the treaty was there was advocacy for purifying gender apartheid against crime against humanity, but it was not supported by member states. So my first call recommendation is that let's please work together in create the pressure and that sense of urgency that's needed for purification of gender apartheid as a crime against humanity. Secondly, as you know, as earlier explained by my colleague, Ambassador Anisha, about the situation and the crisis that we have in the region, which has begun to put pressure on the farmer. So we need to make use of this situation. We call on you to help us to come together and be able to craft a roadmap for Afghanistan after return. What kind of Afghanistan we would like to have, what kind of political order we would like to have, and then what are our principles and what are the challenges that we need to address. But for that, we are scattered all around the globe. And those of us who are inside Afghanistan, we don't have the space to have these kind of dialogues. So we call on you to help us to continue having these dialogues amongst ourselves and also with you to be able to craft that way forward. And the third one is continuation of support for women inside Afghanistan to continue building their resilience. Every penny that is being reduced from the aid from Afghanistan is another punishment to Afghan women and Afghan children because on one hand they are under pressure by the farmer, but on the other hand, if we get the civic space from them, if we get those under-secondary schools from them, if we get those secondary courses from them, there's nothing left for them. And besides Afghan women, we also have to remember that they are all young boys, that they're being targeted by the Taliban. On one hand, they don't allow girls to go to school. On the other hand, they're sending the boys to school, but they have changed the curriculum and they're brainwashing them. And as mentioned by Mr. Pastor, they see all of you as infidels. So we have to believe that if we don't prevent this situation, we don't take that sense of urgency action right now, we are going to be dealing with millions of Taliban that they're going to be graduating here, and we have no plan how to deal with them. So these are the...
Thank you. Plus 2 answers.
Yes, the question that were asked of family members and daughters and wives of the Taliban members. There are 2 categories. One is the leadership of the Taliban, their family members, by the charity and the owners, and also of the international community. Most of them have immunity, as the Taliban members themselves have. Their family members are outside the country. They have democratic living condition. They are members of the soccer playing teams. They are doing theater. They are doing sports. They have a normal life like a European person outside of the country. But those who are inside, they have the same condition and situation, which is in Afghanistan. That's why there is a conflict between the Taliban as well. And that is also an example for the international community to do not trust on what the Taliban are saying, because if they really believed on education beyond sixth grade is banned in the religion that they have created, they will also ban it on their own children and their own women. So that's why I call you to take this as an example. Take this as an example and not trust what they say. The same you have trusted that there might be a Taliban 2.0. Thank you. And the second question for my sister. لما وصلنا أساس طالبات ما انتخابات قانون اساسی داریم شما باید انتخاب کنید تو کی برای شما رهبری کنید معلومایی که اینجا امروز ما هم بگیم ما جمع شدیم نه بخش کجا که مسئول ما نمیگیم که ما میخوایم بریم چه گوش ما نمیگیم که ما میخوایم چی کار بکنیم در افغانستان اساس طالبات ما میگیم که ما قدرت میخوایم و هیچ کدام از ما نمیگیم که ما میخوایم بریم چه گوش کنیم برای شما و هر کس دیگه که شهوت میشه در افغانستان ما نمیگیم ما مثلا افغانستان ما انتخاب میکنیم که رهبر باشه پس ما رزولدان نندازیم
I just want to say something regarding to her question, because what happened in Afghanistan the past 20 years, like those women that they were banned from going to schools, they were, suffered from, war and everything. It was because of the Taliban. Can you forgive this? Because Taliban were in many of those areas in power. I came from south region of Afghanistan. I was born and raised in war, and I saw, many influences that at that time as well, girls could not go to school, girls, could not go to work. It was because of the Taliban. Taliban didn't allow them at that time before 2021 as well. And the same thing they are doing, the same ideology that they had in the past 20 years, the harsher ideology than that ideology they have right now as well. And all of them have been banned everything from women or banned from everything. I just want to end up with this, some question because all those points that I wanted to mention in the end, our colleagues and also our friends they mentioned it before. I just want to ask from all of you some really important questions, because what would happen if tomorrow every girl in Europe was told she could no longer go to school? If classrooms suddenly closed their doors to half of the population? If millions of girls were told that their dreams, education, and their future no longer mattered? For most societies, I know that this would be unthinkable, but this is the daily reality of Afghan girls in Afghanistan. Thank you.
All our speakers for their perspectives, but also all their technical recommendations as well. Thank you very much for joining us today. So now we will have a coffee break and then we will continue with the second panel. Thank
خب سریع عکس وندم در زمان که لایش نخواهید بود